Coffee Conversations with Greg J. We're on. How are y'all today? Coffee Conversations. Primary day in a lot of states. Out here in California, June 7th is our primary. Got your ballot in the mail in California. A lot of ads on TV. They're bombarding us with all of this stuff. Flyers coming in the mail. It's on and popping all over the state of California. Today, we're going to just talk about it. You know, I don't really strive to be this political show. As a matter of fact, we pride ourselves on being really more cultural and observers of the community. Apolitical is what I'd like to say. However, you know, these are the important things that are happening in our community, and we just want to, you know, inform you and inspire you. The main thing, we're not telling you who to vote for. We really would encourage that you just vote, whatever your conscience is. But we want to examine what is before us and help you get the information that you need to make the right choice. There is so much happening in this political arena. And today we're going to talk about the Long Beach mayor's race, the LA mayor's race, and some important races from the state perspective. And we got a lot of guests on today, one of which, you know how I do it. Got to go through my phone and call up my friends who are highly educated in this space and be able to share with our community what it do in this important time. First up, the Honorable Steve Neal. Here he is. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, brother. How are you? Good to see you today.
Good to see you too. You know, we're out here. I'm trying to figure it out there, Steve Neal. Man, I'm getting flyers in the mail. I'm hearing rumors about this and that. What is going on in the beautiful city of Long Beach?
Well, you know, typical for Long Beach. Are you getting all those flyers in the mail because it's election season, right? Mm-hmm. And that is probably the best way to reach the constituency is through the mail process. So we've got about 3 more weeks, and expect your mailbox to be flooded, inundated with more mail, right? Because it's getting closer to election day. You know, Greg, the thing that is really interesting and what folks in this space are going to have to figure out, though, is now, you know, election day isn't the day. You know, there are so many members of the community that have already cast their vote, right? Here in Long Beach, this is the first time that we've been aligned with the rest of the county. You know, when I was elected in Long Beach, our elections were in April, right? So we would be done by now. We would already have finished the primary, and if there was a need for a runoff, we would be preparing for that. I think what you're seeing here is we are now aligned with the county. So our election is the same time as everyone else's. But the difference being this year, everybody has a ballot, everybody has a mail-in ballot, and there are so many people that have already cast their ballots. I've been on in my spare time on the weekend, I've been walking for some of the people that I'm praying will win. And the beauty about that is, if I walked 2 Saturdays ago, and let's say I'd come to your house, Greg, you were on the list, and your ballot now has been received by the county recorders. When I come out this weekend, you're off my list, right? I'm telling that to some of the folks when I phone bang too, because when I'm calling on the phone and they're saying, "Hey, take me off the list," and I'm sharing with them, once the county receives your ballot, you won't get any more phone calls like this from me or any other campaigns. One of the constituents told me this phone call was worth it just for you telling me that.
Yeah.
But that's
let me ask you this. Okay, so how do we cut through the negativity? I mean, to be honest with you, if I were undecided, I think I would be turned off by all of the negative advertising I see, because a lot of it is very, very mean spirited, and I mean that. Maybe there's somebody out there who may be inspired to vote a certain way because of those negative ads. But for me and a lot of other people that I talk to, it's like, okay, dang, why y'all got to go there? It's just really over the top.
Greg, have you thought about this? Perhaps that's the strategy. Perhaps the strategy and the intent behind that type of messaging is to do exactly that. Because folks that operate in this space know what you just stated. Some people will be turned off exactly for that. That is actually a strategy in politics to keep people away from the polls.
Well,
it's not going to stop. There's always what my experience has been is every election cycle, the negativity gets worse. And that's I think that's the thing, and that's the challenge. How do we deal with that, and how do we fix it?
Right. So in Long Beach, I know that there's a lot of controversies over these mailers that we've received, and then there's the little signs people put on their lawns and everything, and posters you see around town. There's one in particular that came out, and I saw it on social media first. But I guess the debate among people is this, I mean, are those bullet holes in the sign against Rex Richardson or not? I'm just gonna say it.
Yes, they are. Right, because the whole idea behind that, the narrative is Rex wants to defund the police. So that those mailers are put out not by the candidate themselves, but by another entity that is running campaign for the candidate, right? And I think what people would like to see is that because it is separate from any of his it's none of the opponents in the race, but it's a group. When you look at those mailers, they will tell you who they are sent by, right? It'll say Committee for Safe something. And you have to go to the Secretary of State website and you can actually find out who is donated to that committee. But that those mailers, they're very controversial. They're members in the community, particularly the African American community, that call it racial. And unfortunately, for the last 3 or 4 election cycles, we've seen this kind of campaigning. It's really heightened here in Long Beach, but I expect it for the rest of this campaign.
And it's just good to have the discussion today so that we can become, educated. Folks may not know about the committees and all of that. And then, in the Black community, I mean, that's our center. Everybody is welcome to have coffee conversations with Greg J. But we do come from a Black perspective, unapologetically so. So I say all that to say, when we see stuff like that, it hits different in the hood, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
It really does. And you think about it when you think about the timing and everything, and on the heels of what happened in Buffalo,
Mhm.
and it's just really tough.
Mhm, mhm,
A couple of decades ago, I worked with the LA County Federation of Labor, and and,
mhm,
and w- we had done something similar in a campaign that we were running
mhm.
for a candidate, and we sent out something of that nature. And boy, the backlash that we received out it. But again, Greg, this was 2 decades ago.
Mhm, mhm,
Right. But the backlash that we received from it, it really taught me something. I've
mhm,
never been one who's been fond of negative campaigning.
mhm.
I always believe you campaign on your record, you campaign on your vision, on what you want to do, and you let the chips fall where they may.
Mhm, mhm,
But, you know, we're all different. There's plenty other people that um, enjoy to employ the idea of negative, what we call negative mailers, negative hit pieces.
mhm.
You know? But once you think about the question I posed to you at the beginning,
Yeah.
perhaps the intent is to suppress turnout,
Mhm,
because
mhm.
people know that there is a percentage of people who feel exactly like what you said, right?
Mhm.
All of this negativity, I'm not voting for anybody.
Right.
That's actually a strategy in politics.
Mhm, mhm. Now, Steve, when you look across the region, I mean, in our past conversations, you've really talked about, the opportunities that we have in the Black community politically. Describe to the people what you see. Should all the stars align? What is our opportunity at this time?
Well, I think from an African American perspective, we be in a political space that I can't really recall in my lifetime. And I've been involved in this for about 30 years now, in some way or form, either um, um, helping candidates get elected, and running campaigns, or actually being that person yourself that ultimately at the end of the day has to push the button. But what I see on the horizon, um, particularly from a regional standpoint, if the major African American candidate in Los Angeles, the Honorable Karen Bass, is elected as mayor, and you have um, Rex Richardson, who is probably one of the favorite, and the vice mayor here in Long Beach, running to be the first African American mayor here in the city, and has a really good shot. But if we had Karen as mayor of Los Angeles, Rex as mayor of Long Beach, we've got Emma Sharif in Compton, and Lula Davis Holmes and Carson, and Mayor Butts in Inglewood. That would be a really strong regional president. And then Holly Mitchell as president of the Board of Supervisors. Um, that would be a very strong African American regional. Um, I don't want to use the word alliance, but if those parties were collaborative in any way, it could be transformative for the region, and really helpful to us. And as I say, it puts us in a unique opportunity where um, um, you would have African American leaderships in these major cities here in Southern California.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Wow, very, very profound as we turn our lens to the region. Want to welcome Jasmyne Cannick to our coffee conversation. She is an all star. There she is. Good morning, Jasmine.
Good morning. Hi, Steve.
How are you today?
Good morning,
Hi, Greg.
Jasmine. How are you?
It's
Yay.
a few weeks before Election Day, so how you think? It's crazy.
Yes, man.
Yes. You've been
Greg,
listening in the
before you go further,
yeah.
I just want to say, Jasmine was one of the most instrumental people in me getting elected to the Long Beach City Council.
I bet she
I never
was.
shared that with you, but she, oh God, she was huge for me, and
Thank you.
very knowledgeable in this space. She always keeps it real,
Yeah.
and I'm happy to share the screen with her today.
Yeah. You
Thank
know, I have
so
watched
much.
Jasmine from afar and up close for many, many years and always have, really respected her to the utmost, man. And like you say, she keeps it real, right? And just good stuff. I'm reading her blogs. I've been in the courtroom on that Ed Buck thing. I can't wait to see what Jasmine's talking about. It was right there. She's on the case, yo.
Yeah.
Love it. So that's
Thank
what's
you
up.
both.
So Steve is saying, hey, we have a propitious opportunity here across the region. You agree with that?
It's very interesting, considering the fact that, and I think Steve will agree, that while we have these Black people in office and potentially going into higher office, our numbers as voters, as residents of these cities and districts and areas is not increasing, right? So I think that that's very interesting, right? Because typically you see more representation when you have more folks in a certain area. The city of LA, for example, our numbers are continually going down, right? The only area in LA where the Black population is growing are the zip codes that encompass Skid Row. And so if, Congresswoman Bass were to be elected, would the Black vote definitely have contributed to it? Absolutely. But would we be the ones? No, if every single Black person that was left in LA voted for Karen, it still wouldn't have been enough. So it's interesting because that means that Black candidates, Black people are appealing to more than just Black voters, right? That white voters see the value in having us in leadership. Latino voters and API voters see the benefit in having us in office. And I think that that's really important, particularly for a county and a city like Los Angeles, where our numbers just don't give us, our numbers just don't give us that power anymore.
We were examining, Jasmine, the amount of negative campaigning that us everyday folks are. I mean, Lord of mercy, turn on the news this morning. I must have already seen 4 negative ads against Karen Bass already. It's not even it's just now 9:00. My goodness, how do we look past all of that garbage?
But you don't look past it. I mean, the whole point, and look, as someone who has written some of those mailers and ads, I can tell you that they do work. And I think that in a post-Trump era, they've taken on a whole new level of viciousness and nastiness, right? Because he was able to get away with so much. And then, folks started following his lead, like Sheriff Alex Villanueva, for example. And, mudslinging in politics is nothing new. We also know that fear does work, right? And so basically what you're seeing right now, more than a smear campaign, I'll use the mayoral election in LA, for example, more than a smear campaign against Karen Bass, it's more of a fear campaign towards voters to scare them into voting for a Rick Caruso, right? Because if you think about all the ads you see for Rick Caruso, he can clean up the city. He's going to stop crime. He's going to put criminals in jail, even though, and I'll expect the average voter to know this, although they should, we are a mayor-light city. Our mayor doesn't have the power to do many of the things that Rick Caruso is claiming that he's going to be able to do. The power in our city lies with the city council and the city attorney. But it's very interesting how fear works in politics, and it's tried, true, and tested, and we will continue to see it. And going into November, if you think it's bad now, it's going to really be bad.
Yeah, that's what Steve, you were pointing that out a minute ago. Let's bring in, I think that's Regina Wilson knocking on our door there from the California Black Media Network. Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, everybody. So good.
Good morning.
Regina, we're talking about the amount of negative ads that we're inundated with in this election season here, from Long Beach to LA, and what's it like across the state? I know you are the executive director of the California Black Media Network, giving us Black community perspectives from Sacramento. What is it? What's going on across the state?
I'm so happy. I live in a house where I live with my brother-in-law. He cut the cord, and so I don't see the ads. I feel like so many other people have cut the cord, so I have not seen, unless I go to my mother's house, I see the ads. But I have seen some of the horrible ads. And I want to say, not just even horrible, I think they're very misleading. They may have a lot of, I'm speaking about the mayor race in Los Angeles. There may be things that are true, but taken out of context. And so I think that is something, it's made me think even more about why, having strong media is so important, because, you need something to be able to combat the things that are not, that put things into perspective and put it into context. And I think, commercials, as Jasmine has said, take things out of context and are very misleading for the average voter. They don't know the difference. So that's very unfortunate.
What are some of the important state races that we need to pay attention to, and why?
I think that they're all important every time. They're all important. I think that it's just a down ballot. So things seem to be kind of sleepy. One of the things that was turned on to us that we weren't paying attention to at the time was the insurance commissioner. And in the insurance commissioner's race, it is getting pretty hot, heavy, and steamy between two Democrats. And there's lots of things that are going on in that race that I'm still trying to get my hands around and my head around. So that is a real interesting race. The state controller's race is an interesting race to us, or to me. And I think probably most people think of it like, why would we care about the controller? But the reality is they have the audit powers, and they are looking and could look at programs that we think or don't think are doing right by communities. And anybody who works in government, you want to have somebody who's there that serves on the CalSTRS board to ensure that investments are happening properly, so that workers have something to look forward to in retirement. So I think there's many different races that are very important, and I just I think most people aren't talking about them just because I think we just had, the recall election, I think really had people captivated. This time around, I think they're like, hey, people are safe. But I don't know if that's necessarily the case in every one of these kind of sleepy races.
Y'all, we were talking earlier about these, posters and flyers that are in the mail, the smear campaigns and all of that. And Steve, you brought up an interesting point about the committees that are behind these types of mailers. And we hear the buzzword, special interest groups, and it's always a bad thing, I guess, to our consciousness. But I'd like to dig a little deeper there. Are these candidates controlled by donations from special interest groups, and why is that a bad thing?
I wouldn't say control. They could be influenced, but control is I think it's overreaching. it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. It's great when you have someone advocating on your behalf, right? That believe in you enough that they are going to work as hard as they can to help you get elected. But to the point Jasmine was making a little earlier, in regard to how that plays out, right? In some cases, it shows up in the negative campaigns, which aren't directed to the candidate or directed by the candidate themselves, but what we defined as a special interest, right? And I control is very strong. There are different groups that have influences that may help you get to an office, and but then it all comes down to an individual thing, what your moral compass is, why you're there to begin with, and but they will have influence. They will have influence with you.
Jasmine, the thing is, so in the LA race, right, we seeing so much, negative ads against Karen Bass, and my phone, I don't, like I said at the top of the show, we are observers of the community. Our objective is to inform and inspire our people, and not really a political pundit. I leave that up to you experts. So my questions are just coming from a very humble, the brother in the community, normal guy in the community perspective. But I would like to know, why isn't it appears that Karen Bass is not fighting back? I want to know more, right? And so my phone has been ringing where people are asking me to try to get to Karen Bass and get her on coffee conversations. I had a 30-minute conversation with a good friend of mine the other day, and we were talking. She was like, "Brother Greg, what has Karen Bass done?" And we went through this whole conversation, only to find at the end of the conversation that she lived in Windsor Hills and couldn't vote anyway. But it was just, a profound conversation. Why isn't she fighting back?
So a couple of things. One, I would not say that she's not fighting back. You have to understand, some candidates decide that they're going to take the former first lady's, motto, and when they go low, we go high, right? So you have to take that into consideration. Two, remember that the amount of money that Rick Caruso has put into advertising, she currently doesn't have, right? She couldn't put that amount of money. And, I tell people all the time, and I know Steve can attest to this, look, we need more than just you saying that you like a candidate or you support a candidate. It's about raising money for that candidate, donating to that candidate, door knocking, phone banking. And a lot of times we don't do that. We, meaning Black folk, we don't do that, right? And so even in my own voter guide, I always put an asterisk, because I want people to know. I put an asterisk by the names of campaigns that I donated to, I worked on, or whatever, because you have to put your money, your time, and your energy where your values are. So I've heard that too, about people thinking that Karen's not fighting back. I wouldn't necessarily say that, but I would also say this. I know just from the work that I'm doing that there was a strategy that, everyone in the Congresswoman's district knows who she is already, right? And so there was an intense focus on introducing Congresswoman Bass outside of her district, right? So if you paid attention, she's done a lot of stuff in the Valley. She's done a lot of stuff on the West Side. She's in areas that aren't necessarily the 37th Congressional District, and that's intentional, right? Because we in the 37th kind of are already familiar with her. And the city of Los Angeles, is huge. Once you cross over that 101, you get into a whole nother area when you're dealing with the West Valley and the San Fernando Valley and those voters over there, who she also has to appeal to, right? And then until quite recently, because city attorney finally, Mike Feuer, dropped out of the race, she was competing for those West Side votes, right? And so when people say, I haven't seen her, I as someone who's working on campaigns right now, I I kind of take that with a grain of salt, because every single day from sun up to sundown, candidates are pounding the pavement and they're out there and they are doing things. We just don't always see it because it's not necessarily meant for us to see. They're targeting another type of voter or another demographic. But if folks are concerned about the level of her advertising, I would suggest to them that for any candidate that they are concerned with, that they feel like they're not seeing, give them more money, give them some money, donate to their campaign. That is how you increase their opportunity. And I will say, for the record, I'm a fan of taking all of the money out of political campaigns, so it's a level playing ground for each and every candidate, not just the candidate with the most money.
Oh, Mike Fuhrer had the dopest beats, so he wins the prize for the best soundtrack for his commercials. Underdog. I was like, that was a good one. Very funny. All right. Well, the interesting thing about this is that's very important. I'm thank you for reminding me, Jasmine, about your voter guide, because in preparation for today's coffee conversation, believe it or not, I got like 4 texts asking for a cheat sheet as they prepare to go for the ballot. So if you could just give us the link, we can put it in the chat and folks can, see what you're talking about there.
Sure. Like, my website is iamjasmyne.com. It's just so easy. I'm Jasmine. It's JASMYNE, and you'll see the voter guide up front, or you can go to Vote for Jasmine, my campaign site. But there are lots of voter guides out there, right? I'm not the only one. And I always tell people, look, the endorsement game is meant to, people you look like or you trust to tell you who to vote. I'm honored that people even consider my opinion worthy enough, right? But I do encourage people who aren't going to do their homework, who aren't going to have time to really research the candidates, to look to someone that they trust, and to follow their voter guide, someone that they know is going to be down for the people, and hasn't been paid to put people on their voter guide.
Very good point.
Very good point. And it's interesting. I was talking to some of the OGs, and we were saying, the need for a elders council, right? And I thought it was an interesting concept. And we were talking about the election, and Black folks going up against other Black folks, and whatnot. That was actually the subject of the conversation. And we began to talk about, like, you have a voter's guide, and I know there's people in LA that will not go to the polls until they see what the Sentinel says. You take your little piece of the Sentinel, you go in there. We're looking for Maxine Waters' piece, all of those whole things. In the Black community, we're looking for reliable sources, right, of how to get our information. Regina, do you see that across the state in Black communities through Black media? Like, are people, how are they waiting for that information?
I think that they do. And I think that, like what Jasmine said, is that people are looking for somebody who's done the homework. But I think we don't have possibly enough people in our community that are doing and taking the time, like Jasmine, and doing the homework, and then being honest about what they're getting and putting the asterisk. I saw that, Jasmine. I thought that was phenomenal, because it really does let you know, like, you can say, look, here goes. And I tell people too, whenever I have a bias to something, let me go ahead and do full disclaimer, because that at least allows people to know that they can trust what you're saying, versus what we see oftentimes. There's a trick dog and trick pony in our community where somebody's getting paid. You don't know how to go look at the filing forms to know that whoever's being paid comes to your community. And, it's very easy for them to give money underneath the guise of other things. Now, unlike Jasmine, I'm not mad that they, that they'll give advertising dollars, because that's like the
I'm not mad about that.
Look at the milk. I mean, no. I'm talking about, I get it, because I get the whole don't have money in politics. But I say this because I look at Black media. I'm like, y'all take your money. But I also encourage, as being a nonprofit, I also encourage the publications to, take your advertising dollars when you can. Be honest, so that what you're doing is, if you're fair and you're honest about your opinion, what you think, do your homework, then when you're giving your opinions to people, even if people give you money, maybe you side with some of the people because you would naturally do that. We all are like that, right? There are people who are going to give to us because we would side with them. But then there are other people that you'll say, baby, not this time. And they may be like, you weren't the one and you gave me money, but I couldn't support you because you just weren't the right fit. So what we need, obviously, too, is what Jasmine says, trying to figure out how we can keep people honest. But I think it starts with that, being able to look at people that have accountability. And there are a few publications that will do a good job in that way. And I mean, I really commend Jasmine for doing what she does, because I think that really does show, it allows people to build trust. And let's be real, most people do not have the time to research this stuff. They don't have the time to go back and look at all the things that a candidate has done over a period of time to know how they would respond to certain things. So, I can appreciate it as an individual, appreciate being able to have access to, voter guide lists like Jasmine's, because it'll allow me to say, oh, wait a second. Okay, I wasn't paying attention to this. And if you weren't paying attention to a particular race, you have someone you could trust, they've done their homework. I mean, I think it's an excellent guide. But yes, up and down the state, not as much as I would like, but up and down the state, I am seeing different people, put guides together.
Can I add something to that quick? So a couple of things. One, I want to piggyback on what Regina is saying, and I want to add this food for thought, right? One of the reasons I also put the asterisk is because I am a political strategist. I work on campaigns, right? And I want people to know that I'm working on a campaign, not because I'm working for the person, because I want them to know they hired a Black woman to lead their campaign. There are very few political campaigns in the state of California that allow Black women to lead as consultants, as strategists, as the general consultant, whatever, right? And so I think it's important for people to know that this candidate put their trust in a Black woman or a Black man, to work on their campaign, to represent them. That to me is very important as a consultant, when I'm always up against all of these white general consultants and white folks who make millions and gazillions of dollars off of Black candidates, right? And so for me, that's like a huge issue. I am all for Black media getting their advertising dollars. Look, I sat down and did several budgets at several campaigns this season and made sure to carve out money for Black media, because my philosophy is you are not going to come and ask for the Black vote and you're not just going to come extract. You're going to put something back in at the same time. And so folks are advertising on various radio stations, they're advertising in various newspapers, and that's the benefit of having a Black consultant, because she's going to think like that. Particularly one that's also a journalist. So she's gonna think like that, right? She understands that. And so I put that out there because when we talk about politics, we haven't even touched the surface just in terms of what's happening behind the scenes and who gets to work on these campaigns and you talk about $25 million put into a campaign. Well, where does the money go? Very little of it goes to Black workers, Black consultants. And so that's something that's also really big for me. And I will say, Regina, one of the things that people reach out to me the most for is the judges. It's always the judges, because, us, we'd be like, Jackson, that looked like a Black name. I'm going to vote for Jackson. And Jackson
thought I was the only one.
Well, Jackson ended up being a deputy district attorney locking folks up. And I'll end on this note. Last go around when I did my voter guide, I did this whole big thing about not wanting to support deputy district attorneys, because to me, that's how if you're trying to change the criminal justice system and you keep electing prosecutors as judges, you got to see the correlation there, right? But then a whole bunch of stuff has happened in the past several years. So this time around, and I was real honest in my voter guide, I was like, this time I had to do a mix. I actually did support some deputy district attorneys because I'm concerned about crime victims and whether or not they're being taken care of. So yeah, I mean, Regina, most people are not going to do the research, and they do need the Sentinel or other publications that they trust to tell them what to do. My whole thing with that is, if you're going to do a voter guide, I just feel like you shouldn't get paid for it. That's my whole thing. Like, you know, and I know we have slates. You don't probably got 20 slates mailed to your house by now. You know what I'm saying? The cop slate, the, you know, the people slate, the whatever. And those are people who are paying to be put in front of you, right?
Right.
You want someone who tells you who to vote for, who is not specifically being paid to say vote for this person.
Right.
What would you all say is the number one issue facing these mayoral candidates?
Homelessness.
Okay. Regina?
Although I will say I've done 3 polls. In one of my campaigns, we've had to do 3 polls in the past year and a half, specifically on City of LA voters. And I will tell you that homelessness went from being the number 1 issue for voters in LA to being second to crime.
Okay.
And that was what, and so Jasmine, that's what I was gonna say. When you said homelessness, I was gonna say crime. I was a victim of a break-in, so I will say, and felt so violated, and then the cops and nobody did anything. I was my own MacGyver or Perry Mason, because I found out, you know, he's taking my credit card, didn't realize it, went to a gas station, used it. I begged the store manager to give me the video footage. Then I turned that into the police. They turned it to the DA and nothing happened. But he stole computers and all kind of stuff. So I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Steve, what do you think? How about you? What's the number one issue?
I think the number one issue in Long Beach is homelessness as well. Homelessness is the big issue. And then to Regina's point, and then second to that is crime. And that's why you see the mailer with the bullet holes.
Holes.
Going back to Jasmine's point about fear. Right? Because we were talking about the committee, that committee is from the police. Yeah. So, you know, it's clear they have a candidate, and the homelessness issue here in Long Beach is tremendous. It's evident in more and more places that it generally hadn't been seen before. And that's the one thing that there's about 6 mayoral candidates in the race here. And they're all beating the pavement talking about what their plan is to address it.
What their plan is. Yeah. I see that. I see that a lot. We hosted and produced a mayoral candidate forum a couple of weeks ago at the Museum of Latin American Art. And all 6 candidates came, and, you know, that seemed to be, you know, the number one concern on their mind. It's interesting to me because I don't think anybody has the magic wand solution, because meanwhile, while everybody is claiming to, you know, be able to end homelessness, rent is going high to the mug. Boy, oh my goodness, it's just too much.
Can I just say this? Look, there's no one solution to fixing our homeless crisis, but I will tell you this: candidates, electeds who are unwilling to address the rent issue aren't serious about our homeless situation. I literally had to go to the Snooty Fox yesterday and pay for a motel for a woman with a 4-year-old kid who is homeless, living in a motel room, because the City of LA's HOPIX program let her slip through the cracks, right? And so when we talk about homelessness, I always try to remind people it's not just the people you see on the street. Every motel in South LA is full of people living in them, not using them and leaving. People are living in motels now in South LA. And they are the unseen homeless, right? But we have to remember those people and the people who are on the brink of homelessness because they cannot afford the high cost of rent. And until we get people in office who are willing to say, we got to put a cap on these rents, you know, do it according to the median income in an area, whatever, until we get folks who are, and we can do it because we've done it with other things. We tell people all the time what they can and cannot do within the city and the county. We are not going to see any real change because the average 1-bedroom in LA is over $2,300, and they're even bidding on apartments. Now you go and it's $2,300, and someone else comes and says, "Well, I'll give the landlord $2,500." Who you think is going to get the apartment? The person who's offering the $2,500. That's what it's come down to in LA.
I mean, and this is one of those things that I hate sounding like it, because every time I probably sound like a broken record, but I think that, our lawmakers, even in Sacramento, I think they don't understand. Every time we put more regulation on top of more regulation on top, these things are making the cost of housing go up. So this is how you could have, homeless housing cost. I want to say, I was reading a story, $800,000 to build one unit. That's ridiculous. I have to tell you, I just moved back to Southern California, and thank God I didn't get rid of a property that I got before I got married. We're living with family. We can't be where I want to be. I can't see paying $1 million for a house I still got to fix up. I can't see it. So I'm building an ADU, and I'll live in my ADU. That is what I have to do. And that's still going to cost me almost $200,000 probably to do. But at least it'll be mine. And at least, but I feel bad for people who don't have that same scenario, but I am feeling it as well. I feel and see that there's a huge problem. But I also know that, I get that there's safety concerns. I recognize, though, that the inflation, like we're just not dealing with some of the core issues that are creating some of this problem. So I, like the next person, I want to be green too. But the reality is, some of the green policies are costing us in a way, and they're putting a very horrible tax on Black folks who are not getting paid the same, who are not getting the same opportunities, who don't get the contracts, who don't get all these things. So we don't get to share in the wealth, but we're paying over $7 for gas, but we're not seeing any of the contracts. Our businesses are not seeing the contracts, the jobs, any of those things. So to me, I think our lawmakers have to think long and hard before they say, I want this, because you can't have this without making sure that we have the things that we need when those costs start rising. We can't just go say, I'm going to go out and go buy a Tesla, or I'm going to go buy an EV. It's not in the cards for so many people. And as a single mother at one point in my life, I could only imagine what it would be like. I mean, thank God for you, Jasmine, taking and saying, I'm going to go pay for this woman to have a motel room for the night. But literally, what is she going to do for the next night and the next night? And you can't be the one funding it. You're sitting here looking at how much you're paying. So I just think that we have over almost $90 billion in our state surplus. There needs to be a better plan forward, or we're taking too much money from the people because they cannot live. And I think that is something we're going to have to look at. It is a huge problem. And I don't know how you fix it. As Jasmine said, there's going to be multiple solutions that are going to have to come in place. But, maybe we're going to have to, Greg, commandeer some land so people can start homesteading. I feel like, we're doing that anyway. But maybe that's what we're going to have to do. Make it so people have low interest loans. Because, the reality is that government has created some of the problems, and it's because people have kicked issues down the road. They said, I'm going to go ahead. I want this policy. I want my legacy to be that it's green. I want my legacy to be this. And now we're paying for that.
The pay equity thing is very, very serious. When I see the price of some of the rents and all of that, I'm like, who's making that money? My goodness, $2,500, $3,000, for a place that you don't own is just a lot. Just a lot.
Please don't remind me. I pay $2,350 a month. Now, I love my place. I have peace of mind. I recently moved out of downtown. I decided to do a year in downtown. I wanted my sexless in the city life. So I had this beautiful loft, and it was gorgeous. But every time I walked out the front door of the building, I was stepping over meth pipes. I was stepping over. It was just horrible. So after my lease was up, I left and I came back to where I belong, which is West Adams. And, now when I come back, the rent's gone up another $500. So it's like, every time I see a white person moving in my neighborhood, I'm like, the rent's going up. The rent's going up. And now we're at $2,350, which I think is absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
And you don't own a home, right? So it's not like you're not paying towards a mortgage with that or anything, right? And these are the conversations we need to have. There are places in downtown LA, $10,000 a month, over $10,000 a month, and I say to myself, now who in their right mind, entertainment industry, I guess, sports people, I guess, but really $10,000 a month?
I know. I went inside the new building in Long Beach there, Steve Neal, right there on Alamedas and Ocean. I think the one bedroom was like $6,000 a month in that place. I was like, "Are you serious?"
LBCs?
Yes.
Did it come with a maid? Did it come with a maid? Did it come with a new car? Right. Was your whole entire view the ocean? Can you
had a good view, but still.
Oh, wow.
You know, I met a guy on the plane one time. You know, when you come to Long Beach and the downtown area is beautiful and they're building all over the place. They're building all these great buildings and everything. And I was coming back from Africa, and I was sitting next to a guy who happened to live in downtown Long Beach, and he looked at me and was like, "Dude, I'm the only one on my whole floor." You know, he lived in a really nice building, and he said he basically was the only person on his entire floor. So many vacancies, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's how I got into downtown. By the way, I didn't get into downtown because Jasmyne's a baller. Jasmyne was able to get that beautiful loft in downtown because the pandemic had hit and people fled. And then the landlords of those buildings had to lower the price of the rent. And so I said, this is my opportunity to get this off my bucket list. And I was able to move downtown. But had that not happened, the place I lived in would have surely been between the $3,500 to $4,000 range.
So who are they building for?
Not us.
Not us.
You know they ain't building for. They building for the Chinese coming over here. They building for white folks. A friend of mine, we were having a conversation because she came over to my house, and she was remarking about all the white people on my block. And mind you, I live in the Avenues on, West Adams.
Yes.
And she said, "Oh, these white people over here." And I said, "Well, here, I just want to let you know, they're still over there too, where they came from. It's not like they came down here and opened up vacancies where they left from. They're just taking over everything, right?" I know, even when I lived downtown, I never quite understood how all of the younger folks, like in the Gen Zers and the younger millennials, were affording to pay that rent. I can guess how some of them were doing it. But I still am confused, like how folks were able to do that. I have no idea, but I just know that they're not doing it for us because we've been here, right? And every new building displaces us. It puts us out. I will end my little tirade on this because we do a whole show on this. When your credit score has to be over 700, and you have to make 5 times the rent, and you have to pay, even though it's illegal, first, last, a deposit, a cleaning fee, and sign over your firstborn child, there is definitely something wrong. So when you talk about the regulations, and Regina, we should also look at that when it comes to renting to folks too, because what they ask for people to go through just to rent an apartment clearly makes sure that it's not for us that they're trying to rent to.
Let me jump in on that point and just to piggyback on some things that you said, Greg. So you talked about the downtown of Long Beach, and if you go back a decade ago, it didn't look like that. And when I was on the council, there was something that came forward called the downtown plan, right? And where they had done a 30-year plan, and the idea is what you see today. But in that, going back to Jasmyne's last point, what was there before we built all those high rises and we built all those modern buildings? That area there was a lot of lower income folks that lived in Long Beach that have been displaced. And what generally happens historically is that I moved from Compton, been a longtime resident of Compton, to Long Beach about 20 years ago. And I did that because one, my property value went up, my taxes went down, and all I did was move a half mile south from where I was. My wife calls where I live Compton Beach because it's close to Compton College, right? And most people that frequent over there, they don't even realize that it's Long Beach because it borders Compton, Paramount, etc. But I say all that to say this: when we displaced all those low-income residents downtown, where do they go? Where is it that they move to? And traditionally, where they come is to North Long Beach, because I moved to North Long Beach. I have probably one of the largest houses in our tract. And if it was anywhere else in Long Beach, it would have gone for hundreds of $1,000s more. And that was the deciding factor on why I moved. Right. But now what we have, as you displace those folks, now even North Long Beach and Compton, houses are going for almost $1 million. So if they're selling in the 800, 900,000, that means you can get rent what we've been talking about, 3,500, 4,000, which is more than what I pay for a mortgage. So
Well,
there has something we
all
do.
variables, right? Because you got to have a down payment. You get over that, you get over to that 900,000, you're looking at 20%. You're not looking, I think even in LA, you're probably not even, I think you're looking at, you can't do like 3.5% down or 3% down FHA. So there's all these different variables that are going to have to be put in place, but there's pressures. There are just definite pressures, whether it's the building, but as Jasmine said, who are we building for? Where are we building? SB 9 is, and there's a whole companion of bills that's supposed to make it so that cities can't turn down building. And they now have everybody almost living in little tiny homes. But you're, like you said, Compton is 900,000. Where I'm looking at Redlands-ish area in Highland of San Bernardino, $900,000. I mean, I'm not saying you can't get stuff cheaper than that, but all of it needs work, or you're on top of each other. So it either fits your needs or not. And I'm thinking of multi-generational living. So we're looking at bigger properties because I plan on taking care of my parents and my husband's mom. But you can't find that. I mean, I've been saying I'm looking for a candidate that will talk about giving me credit, because look, if I'm not going to put them in a home, shouldn't I get some kind of credit? Because I'm looking at making sure I take care of the responsibility that I would be thrusting onto all of you. We're caring for everybody else's stuff. So I'm like, shouldn't there be some kind of credit that I get for wanting to be able to build and have that generational living and be able to take care of my entire little family unit. So I mean, it's ridiculous, and I don't think that any candidate I've heard has had a real response on how you would fix it. But I do think, because I spend most of my time looking at the people in Sacramento, I'm not sure that they have come up with really good comprehensive plans either. I think that they have things that are really working to make things worse.
Yeah. This is a really, really super big issue. And it's interesting, like when we talk about these downtown areas, Jasmine's has a beautiful loft, downtown. I know I was trying to get one too. Jasmine's lofts are dope down there, right? But yeah, when you step out on that street, boy, oh boy, that's another notion. But the same in Long Beach, Steve Neal, I heard one of our candidates talking about the city paid more attention to the downtown area than, say, the areas north and other districts across the city. But as a business owner, where my studio is in downtown, I'm in the East Village Arts District. I'm the only brother within miles. Anyway, but it's after dark, man, it's a whole nother world down there. Right. My space is nice. And right now, the rent is cheap, but the licensing is really what's hitting my pocket kind of hard. The business license to hold the space down there. But at nighttime, it's especially the needleheads and the zombies are abundant, and so here's our second issue, which is crime. And while we might say our downtown area is off the chain and this is the shining jewel of our city, it needs some work over there. And I would like to see the candidates really begin to talk about the entire city and keeping us safe, the entire city getting the homeless off the street, because they are abundant. And you say meth pipes and needles all over the place.
And if you're on the Long Beach Boulevard corridor, which is the sex trafficking route, and we can go all into that, you're going to find condoms and all those other things along with your needles, right? And that's spilling into our neighborhoods now. Before it was just on the corridor, and now what you see is in the neighborhoods surrounding those corridors, you see more of that illicit activity moving off of the corridor because of some of the policing and some of the strategies that are being used to curtail it into the neighborhoods themselves. So it becomes a huge issue. And I'm sure, Gregory, you've done a lot of or participated in debates, and I'm sure all the candidates have expressed what their concern is in those areas. But it's a big problem, the homelessness and the issue. And again, that's why you get that mailer against the mayoral candidate, because basically it's saying he wants to defund the police and be in cell phone crime.
Wow.
And that's taken out of context. And when you listen to what that whole dialogue was about, and having the opportunity to sit behind it, when your city budget, when you're paying your public safety, police and fire, lifeguards, like everything that has to do with public safety, when that budget of the city exceeds 50-60%, your city is going to be in trouble. And that was the context of the conversation. And I've said all along, the language and of defunding the police probably wasn't good to begin with. Reallocating funding or something like that, right? Semantics, right? Let's talk about defund, reallocate, because people, to what we've talked about today, Black people want to be safe too, right? And I've had people say, I don't want a community with no police. That's not what we're saying. But maybe a policeman shouldn't come out and address someone that's homeless that clearly has mental issues. Maybe a person with a gun is not the first person that they need to see with their contact. Those were the kind of things, the conversations that were being had. And those are the kind of solutions that we have to find some balance to.
Okay, we got to get out of here, but I'm curious to ask you, Jasmine. Okay, West Adams, that's District 10. There's some fireworks going on over there. Well, what's your view, and how is this election going to help solve the quote unquote confusion that's happening in District 10 of Los Angeles?
Well, first of all, I worked for Herb Wesson until he left. His last term, I was with him the last couple of years of his term. So I'm probably a little biased, but I will say that West Adams is District 8 and 10. Because like when you get down to like the first AME area, that's Marquis's. When you get the Western and Adams over in that area. So it's both. District 10's not on the ballot. And so, no, this election is not going to solve any of that. And I just think that it'll probably just have to be played out, and we'll just see what happens in court. But what I will say is that regardless of what people think about Councilmember Wesson, I mean, if you wanted someone to get in there who could hit the ground running and just pick up the ball for the residents, I mean, you couldn't get a better person, because anyone else would have had a steep learning curve, right? And he had just left that seat, right? So I just think in those terms, it's better to have someone around the horseshoe that can actually vote and knows what they're doing. So it's just, the whole situation to me is very unfortunate, but it just goes back to politics, right? Because if you ask me, and I'm not saying I'm anti-Mark Ridley Thomas, but if you already served 3 terms in the city council and you only get to serve another term because of a technicality, I don't think that was fair anyway, because he already represented us in the 8th district, right? And so, and I'm a huge fan of getting new voices, new people into office, and not just playing musical chairs and rotating the same people. So that's the point of view where I come from.
Yeah, I heard Weston. He seems he's the right man for the job. That's what I see. Yes. Okay, good stuff, you guys. Thank you so much for coming in, sipping coffee with Greg J. This is good. Coffee Conversations with Greg J. Jasmyne Cannick's got the voter guide. The link is in our chat. Any last words there, Regina Wilson?
No, I hope that people go out. I hope that they are educated, and I hope that they vote. I hope that they participate. Freedom isn't free, and this environment we live in is a contact sport.
Yeah.
Contact sport.
Be armed.
Jasmyne Cannick, what do you say?
I'm going to do a quote. Every election is decided by the people who don't show up to vote.
Stephen
So
Neal?
let's think about that.
Well, my former boss used to say, this is the most important election of your life, right? Every election cycle, especially for us, we touched upon things about our decreasing numbers. And Jasmyne alluded to how we have to transcend race, right? Because there are no traditional Black neighborhoods anymore, right? So, and it's very important for us as people of color to be involved in the political process. I've always said this: if you don't have a seat at the table, you're ultimately going to end up on the menu. And not only do we have to have a seat, we have to have influence at that table. And we do that by being politically active, and we have to encourage our young people, because our voters are dying off. I'm probably older than all of you guys on this call, and that's what I found going back to Jasmyne's. When I've walked more precincts in North Long Beach probably than anybody over the last 20 years, and the first thing that I've noticed in walking with our candidate now is this was a Black district when I was in office in population, but it's not anymore. Right. And if we don't get our youth involved, it's going to be difficult for us to maintain representation.
There we have it. Got to get out and vote. Got to preserve that right. Just vote, y'all. That's what we say here. I'm just doing the best I can to bring my friends along. Thank you. So go ahead, Regina.
Be educated and vote.
That's right.
That's right.
Please be educated. Please.
Just please be informed. I want you to vote, but I want you to be informed. Yes. And I think that all of us are doing work in many ways to make sure you have the information so that you can make an educated decision when you go into that voting booth.
Yeah. And that's why I'm glad to have friends like y'all to come on here and let's just chop it up, because there's a lot for us to decipher, a lot for us to think about as we go ahead and cast our ballot. For me, just vote, y'all. It is a hard-earned right for us as a people. That was one of the major fronts of our movement. And even now across the country, you see them trying to adjust and even take away our right to vote. So get out there and vote, but be informed as you vote. That's what we're trying to do here. Coffee Conversations. Check us out. Coffee Conversations with Greg J on that Facebook page. You can join it and see all of our stuff. We're on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, share, help me beef up I'm working on my YouTube game, y'all. I need to beef them up. So you got to like and subscribe. It's right there for you. It's on our website, Beach City Radio, beachcityradio.com. And then we will also repurpose the audio wherever you get your favorite podcast. You'll be able to hear it in about another day or so. You'll hear it out there on Spreaker, Apple, Google, wherever. Just say Coffee Conversations with Greg J. Boom. It'll be right there for you. Man, I can't thank you guys enough. Have a powerful day. Walk in love. Remember to love one another. Peace and blessings.
Thanks.
Guys, be safe.
Thank you.
Yeah.